This conference will now be recorded.
All right, thank you, Josh. Good evening, everyone. Good to be back again for Bible class. And tonight's subject we have Live Life Out Loud. This is part 2, or well, Live Life Out Loud from Proverbs. This is session 2, and it's called Spit and Savor. And I particularly wanted to get a couple of sort of mouthy words. So spit and savor sort of really were appropriate, but we'll find out why in a moment. Just a little bit of a review of last week. Last week we did session 1. So this is session 2. But last week we had the topic of living life out loud, lip balm. So the essence of living life out loud is really a study of how God wants us to use our voices and how he wants us to make noise in a proactive way. Sort of things like self-talk, praise, encouragement, prayer, playing music, teaching, reproving, rebuking, and preaching, and that sort of thing. So in these 2 talks, we're particularly focused on instructions to live life out loud from Proverbs. So session 1, we talked about lip balm, which is where I was getting to, speaking up for those who can't speak for themselves, and having lips that speak words of healing. So when we looked at speaking up for those who can't speak for themselves, we looked at Proverbs chapter 31, verses 8 and 9. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of those who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and defend the rights of the poor and the needy. And what we saw was that we all make excuses to do that. And our excuses are very much like the excuses that Moses was made when God told him to go and defend the rights or speak out for the people of Israel when they were captive in Egypt. And we also saw that those excuses were actually no excuses at all with God. And then after that, we looked at healing, and what we saw was a variety of proverbs that talk about the tongue of the wise bringing healing. And we saw those points that we learned from those verses illustrated in the life of Joseph. So tonight, we're going to talk about spit and savor. And the word spit, I've chosen in place of word reproof or reprove. And I sort of got this idea from Deuteronomy, from the passage that talks about the marriage, levirate marriage. Sorry, I can't see that half of my screen, so I apologize if I mess up like that. But anyway, so yeah, that's what comes from the levirate marriage, which is found in Deuteronomy 25, and I think this sort of illustrates why I wanted to call it spit. Because reproof is a lot like, when you tell someone off, it's a little bit like spitting in their face. And a man would wear, and the levirate law, the levirate marriage law was where a man was supposed to take if his brother died and had a wife, he was supposed to take his brother's wife and raise up children for his brother, or at least a child for his brother. And there was cases where the man would not refuse to do that. And so in Deuteronomy 25, verses 5 to 30, we read that whole law. But this is the summary of it. And it says, then the elders of his town shall summon him and talk to him. And if he persists in saying, I do not want to marry her, verse 9, his brother's widow should go up to him in the presence of the elders, take off one of his sandals and spit in his face and say, this is what will be done to the man who will not build up his brother's family line. That man's line shall be known in Israel as the family of the unsandaled. And so that was really a massive reproof to the person who chose not to build up their brother's family line. And part of that reproof was the spitting in his face and the unsandling of that person. And so that's why I called this part of it spit. reproof, just for your information. We talked a little bit about Timothy last week, just to show that, you know, this is one of the places where I got a lot of these ideas from originally, when it comes to thinking about living life out loud. And so reproof is found very clearly in Timothy, where it says, preach the word, be ready in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, and exhort with complete patience and teaching. So even even Timothy was told that one of the jobs he had to do in the ecclesia was to rebuke. And it's a job that I think can be done, and I've got to be really careful here, because it's one of those jobs that can be done really, really well, or it can be done really, really terrible, or it can be done really, really well and go really badly, or people avoid it altogether. And I tend to be the sort of person, I think, and maybe someone will correct me, but I tend to be the sort of person that doesn't like rebuking other people, because I'm a hedgehog and I don't like confrontation. Rhino type of people do enjoy that more, but yeah, I'm the sort of person that doesn't tend to like doing it. And yet there it is, told to Timothy that rebuke or reproof is something that we should be doing in order to help and grow the ecclesia. And it's a very difficult operation to perform. And all of us know people who have been turned away because of a rebuke, and that's really, really sad. But we also know of people, and maybe even ourselves, who have been shown a better way by rebuking. I've got some chat things here. I'll just check that. Sorry, wasn't anything particular there. That's all right. I was just thought someone might be telling me that they can't hear me or something. So as far as rebuking goes, the Proverbs show us really clearly some of the things that we can do to get it right. And I thought this was really, really interesting, because there's a whole lot of Proverbs that talk about rebuking. And in particular, what I've been looking at, what I've been picking out of Proverbs are the really positive sort of verses in Proverbs that talk about using your voice in a particular way. And rebuking was just one of those themes that I chose. It's not the only theme for living life out loud in the Proverbs, but this is one that sort of really appealed to me, because we don't talk about it. So what does it, all right, here we go. So here we go. Here is my list of wisdom from Proverbs about giving rebuke. And as we go through this, we're going to be looking at 2 Samuel chapter 12 as well, where David rebukes Nathan. No, wrong way around. Nathan rebukes David. So David had sinned really badly because he'd gone and he'd seen Bathsheba taking a bath, and he'd taken her, brought her, they had a good night together, and she got pregnant, and then he murdered Uriah, her husband, and they had a baby, and yeah, it was a pretty bad situation. And David had closed his mind off to the wrongness of all that he'd done. So we're going to go through that story a little bit as well. So point number 1 from Proverbs, and this one comes from Proverbs chapter 19, verse 25. We've got 10 points, by the way. If you're taking notes, you want to leave a little space for 10 points here. Number 1, reprove a man of understanding and he will gain knowledge. So pick your victim well. And what I mean by that is that when, let's just go to the example of David and Nathan and David. The interesting thing, when you have a look at 2 Samuel 12, verse 14, you might want to keep your finger in there just for a while. But when you come to 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 14, you'll find that it gives us a time period. It says, nevertheless, because by this deed you have utterly scorned the Lord, the child that is born to you shall die. So that means that this time frame that Nathan went to David was at least 9 months later, probably a year or maybe more. David wasn't ready for rebuke before that. And I don't think, I mean, God chose this timing. We're going to see that in a moment. But I don't think David would have been the man of understanding before that moment. So pick your victim well, pick the timing well. And that's part of the wisdom from Proverbs. Reprove a man of understanding. Don't go reproving someone you don't think is going to. And actually, there is another proverb that says, reprove fools, but it's talking in a lot more of a political sense, and we won't be talking about that one tonight. But in this case, and what we're looking at is where you've got a brother or a sister or a family member or something like that, you've got to pick your victim well. If you're going to spit on them, if you're going to reprove them, they've got to be the person who can actually cope with it and who is the sort of person with understanding to be able to cope with a reproof. So the second one is be wise in your reproof. Proverbs chapter 25, verse 12. Like a gold ring or an ornament of gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. Like a gold ring or an ornament of gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. So you've got to be a wise reprover. Now, Nathan was that sort of person, wasn't he? Because, and you can tell this, because he didn't go there all by himself. 2 Samuel 12, verse 1. And the Lord sent Nathan to David. The Lord sent Nathan to David. Nathan had direct guidance from God to reprove David. Now, we might not get that direct guidance, but when we do go to reprove someone, let's be a wise person. We need to pray about it before we do. Don't just jump in the heat of the moment. Pray and seek direction. And I think that's really, really important, especially not jumping in the heat of the moment. When we're angry, when we're frustrated, we say things wrong, we're acting in the heat of the moment, and all we're thinking about is ourselves. But if we're wise, we'll give ourselves time to cool down. We'll go at the direction of God or after prayer, and we'll be able to turn that conversation around. And I love the way Nathan did it. Have a look at verses 1 to 4 of 2 Samuel 12. The Lord sent Nathan to David, and he came to him and he said to him, there were two men in a certain city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing but one little ewe lamb, which he had bought. And he brought it up, and it grew with him and with his children. It used to eat of his morsel and drink from his cup and lie in his arms, and was like a daughter to him. Now there came a traveler to the rich man, and he was unwilling to take one of his own flock or herd to prepare for the guest who had come from him, but he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him. But this was Nathan's reproof. Okay, there was a little bit, oh, thank you for that. That'll be great. Sorry, my voice seems to be going. Hope it lasts. But, sorry, where was I? Nathan's rebuke of David was in the form of a story, or at least this first part of it was. And it got David interested. And this is a wise way of rebuking, because it's better that the person convicts themselves, as David did, we'll see that later on, then we stand there and we point the finger at them. So, moving on. 3, be sure they have a listening ear. Proverbs chapter 25, verse 12. Same verse again. Like a gold ring or an ornament of gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. So make sure that person has a listening ear. And when David was sitting there with Nathan, and Nathan was telling his story, David was sitting there on his throne, and he was interested and he was listening because he was sitting on the throne, and he was sitting on the throne of judgment. He was sitting there listening as a judge. He might not have been listening as like, oh, you're going to rebuke me, so I'm going to sit here and pay attention. No one does that. But he was listening because he was listening as a judge. And I think if we can make sure that that those we are reproving have a listening ear, we're far more likely to make progress. So if you put those two things together, you have a really precious combination. Like a gold ring or an ornament of gold is a wise reprover, point number 2, to a listening ear. You can get that wise reprover together, you, and you can get that person you're reproving, the listening ear, to actually listen. You're going to make a really big difference in those lives, and in that life. You're going to make it so that's like a gold ring or an ornament. The descriptions in other versions for this verse were amazing, as far as, you know, the delicate necklace or the beautiful earrings and those sort of descriptions. This is a really, really precious thing that you have if you can get the wise reprover and the listening ear together in the same place at the same time with the same mind. So point number 4, be a friend. Proverbs chapter 27, verses 5 and 6. We'll look at this verse for the next 3 sections. Proverbs chapter 27, verses 5 and 6. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Faithful are the words of a friend. You need the friendship first. Build that friendship before you have to rebuke anyone. And it seems to me that Nathan was a trusted friend of David's. So be a friend. And you can't build a friendship in a day. And if you're not a friend, your rebuke is going to be lost. People are just going to go, no, so much for them, I don't care. Be a friend first. Point number 5, caution. This will hurt. Reproof wounds. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. This is going to hurt them. You need to have a relationship for them to trust you with the scalpel. I want to just tell you something that happened to me on Monday night. And Ron, this is no reflection on you. On Monday night, we did Family Matters, and we'd just got through the whole of Family Matters, and the record button had been turned off, and we were having our discussion. And Ron came on and he says, "Oh, Robert," he says, "your sound was really terrible tonight." He said, "You know, you were muffled, and we couldn't hear you, and there was an echo, and you know, it was really bad." And really, that just went bang straight to my heart. And it wasn't logical at all, because Ron wasn't criticizing anything that I had done at all. He was criticizing what he wasn't even criticizing. He was just making a point. it just didn't sound good. And he says, we're going to have to set you up with a microphone for the next time, so an external mic, because your computer mic's not very good. And I'm sitting there, and I know logically I was going, it doesn't matter, this is just a microphone. But emotionally I was going, ouch, that hurts. And sorry, Ron, I know I'm just explaining what I was going through at the time. And actually, in the end, it's worked out really well, because I've got an external mic. It's just sitting up there, and hopefully the sound is coming across a lot better than what it did last time. And I have grown from it. But what I'm just saying is that even though what Ron said to me was not even a reproof or a rebuke, I took it that way, and it hurt. Now imagine if he'd said to me, well, that was just a stupid waste of time. That would have been totally crushing. Or why didn't you put more Bible quotes in that? Or why didn't you, whatever it was, you should have done that, or you shouldn't have done that, or something. That would really have crushed me. So, but because Ron is a friend, and because he did it in a wise way, even though it hurt, we still made progress through it. And we're better. We're now that article of gold, that gold necklace, that beautifully worked piece of jewelry, because of his wise reproof. Thank you. Appreciate that, Ron. Actually, I do. So beware that it will hurt, and don't expect it not to. If you reprove someone, even if it's a little, even if you think it won't hurt, it may well do to someone else. So point number 6, reproof must bring healing. Proverbs 27 verse 6 again. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. I have a scar across my chest. It goes from about there to there, around about that much. There was a scar I got when I was a day or so old, day or two old. It was a scar that gave me life. And I would guess, because I can't remember, but I would guess it was a scar that caused me and my parents a lot of pain. But that scar, being cut open at such a young age, brought healing to me, brought life to me. Now, I also have, wrong hand, I also have a relatively crooked finger, which you probably can't see on there, but anyway, I have a relatively crooked finger. Now, I got that from an accident at work. And, I was doing some turning on a lathe, and I put my finger a little bit too close to the truck. And next thing I'd broken a finger, and I'd burst the other one, and yeah, it was a bit yuck. So I have a couple of different scars, but the scar that is faithful, the one that is faithful was the scar that gave me life. The other one caused me a scar that didn't give me life, a scar that wounded me. What Nathan's rebuke did when he was rebuking David is that it brought about confession, repentance, and life. Have a look at 2 Samuel chapter 12, verses 12 and 13. Nathan said to David, "For you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before Israel and the sun." David said to Nathan, "I have sinned against the Lord." And Nathan said to David, "The Lord has also put away your sin. You shall not die." David confessed, and Nathan said, God has put away your sin, you will not die. But there was still a scar. Nevertheless, because by this deed you have utterly scorned the Lord, the child who is born to you shall die. And then Nathan went to his house. Nathan's rebuke of David brought about confession, repentance, and life. And point number 7 here is to be earnest. Proverbs chapter 27 verse 9 reads this: oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. Notice the word friend again. Be a friend. We can't do this unless we are a friend. And our earnest counsel comes from a desire for the best for the other person. Put your heart into it. Give it your all for the saving of that other person. Give it everything you have. Be earnest, because what you're looking at is the life of this other person. And so often I think when rebuke happens, it happens because we have a grudge that we want to share, that we want to get out of ourselves. That's not the reason we should be doing it. The reason we should be doing it, like Nathan, and you imagine, I just want you to imagine the story that Nathan going to David, and God said, Nathan, you've got to go and talk to David, and you've got to tell him about his sin. Now Nathan is, even though Nathan's a friend of David's, Nathan is going to David with the worst possible message he could ever do. Nathan is going to David to tell him that David is wrong. And David is the king of Israel, and he's not only king of Israel, he's pretty much king of the world, the known world around that area anyway. And if David had wanted to, David could have said, Nathan, off with his head. And that would have been the end of Nathan. Nathan could have been put in a dungeon for the rest of his life. But Nathan went at God's request because he loved David. And he wanted to see that change in David. And he would have been a man after with the same heart as God that said, David now needs to change. David needs to learn what he's done wrong. And David needs to repent. And David needs to turn back to life. And so Nathan went in earnest with a heartfelt message to David. And I just want you to think for a moment, just as we summarize this, that when we hear from other people, and I want you to put on your ears now instead of your mouth, because we've been talking about what it means to reprove someone, but I want you to think about what it means to hear from other people. And as we were traveling home, we've been out and around this afternoon, and as we were traveling home this afternoon, we heard the song Blessings by Laura Story, which has the words, so I haven't got this in my notes because it just happened just before we got home, but it has the words of blessings came like raindrops. You know, things we don't, and she sings about things that we don't like. What if the blessings were the bad things in our lives? What if the blessings in our lives were actually the bad stuff that happened? Is what her song's about. And this is really important when we have rebuke from people, that we actually listen, as we've talked about, but that we remember this too, that maybe that person who has come to us, no matter how hard, no matter how much they wound us, no matter how much it hurts, I wonder whether that person might be a Nathan that's been sent from God to us. Has God sent that person to you for a reason? So I want you to just have a quick look. If you want to turn this one up, we're sort of finished in 2 Samuel 12. But if you want to turn this one up in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 12, I think this sums up beautifully the attitude we need to have when it comes to reproving one another. And it's a bit of a difficult subject, and it's not something I particularly wanted to deal with, but it is important, and it is part of living life out loud. So Proverbs chapter 3, verse 12. Proverbs chapter 3. Let's read from verse 11. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline or be weary of his reproof, for the Lord reproves him whom he loves, as a father the son in whom he delights. Isn't that beautiful? The Lord reproves him whom he loves, and as a father the son in whom he delights. And if he sends a Nathan to us, then we got to remember that God loves us, and that's why he sent Nathan to us. And if we go and reprove someone, we need to be that person just like God. We need to be that person just like God, who loves the person that we are reproving. As a father, the son he delights in. So that was my little bit on spit. Okay? I hope you got something out of that, and it's a bit of a controversial subject because everyone's going to go, oh yes, but I know, and all those other excuses. But I just wanted to show you what the Proverbs said about it, and I thought they were very wise words from Proverbs about how we can reprove one another in a way that's effective, loving, and precious. So the next part of it, we've had our mains. I want to look at savor, and I want us to savor the reward. Savor the rewards of living life out loud. And what we've had so far when we've looked at reproof is a pretty heavy main course about talking about the spit of rebuke and reproof. And so now what I want to do is give you a sweet treat, a sweet reward to savor as we finish. And in this section, what I want to do is just really go through a whole lot of a number of different verses from Proverbs. And I just want you to get the idea of this. This isn't a solid, like let's look at each word, look each verse sort of thing, Bible study. This is a get the feeling of this. And what you'll see by the time we get to the end of it is that this reward, the rewards of speaking well, the rewards of living life out loud, according to the Proverbs, are just incredibly amazing. And just putting them together in this sort of order is something that, well, sort of, I did say blow my mind at one stage, one other time, and I got criticized for it. But yeah, it blows my mind. So, savor the reward. Well done, good and faithful servant is our backdrop on this. So, firstly, by living life out loud, God's way. And this isn't just rebuking. This is living life out loud in God's way altogether, speaking well, words of healing, reproving, teaching, sharing wisdom, all that sort of thing. By doing that, we bless individuals. Proverbs 9, verse 9. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase in learning. Proverbs 13, verse 14. The teaching of the wise is a fountain of life, that one may turn away from the snares of death. And Proverbs 14 verse 25, a faithful witness saves lives. So we can bless individuals. That's one of the rewards that we get, is that we can bless people with that, with using our words well. We can bless communities. Proverbs 11 verse 11. By the blessing of the upright, a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked, it is overthrown. That was Proverbs 11 verse 11. We can bless communities with our voices. We can get acceptance from people. As a third point, Proverbs chapter 16 verse 13. Righteous words are the delight of a king, and he loves him who speaks what is right. So you get acceptance from the king. Proverbs 22 verse 11. He who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend. So we get acceptance from people. What a neat thing. So we can bless individuals, we can bless communities, we get acceptance from people if we speak right, if we do what is right. The rewards are pleasant. Proverbs 22 verse 17 to 18. Incline your ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply your heart to my knowledge, for it will be pleasant if you keep them within you. If all of them are ready on your lips, it will be pleasant if you keep them ready on my lips. That's awesome. It's sort of, so far where we've got, it's just really nice things. Okay? It'll give you satisfaction by using your tongue in a way that's pleasing to God. Proverbs 12 verse 14. From the fruit of his mouth, a man is satisfied with good. Proverbs 13 verse 2. From the fruit of his mouth, a man eats what is good. Proverbs 18 verse 20. From the fruit of a man's mouth, his stomach is satisfied. He is satisfied by the yield of his lips. That's neat. The things we say give us the same sort of satisfaction as eating a good meal, which you probably all had at lunchtime, if not again at dinner time. Favor. The reward of using your lips in a good way brings favor. Whoever rebukes a man, Proverbs 28 verse 23. Whoever rebukes a man will afterward find more favor than he who flatters with his tongue. You will also find peace. A soft answer turns away wrath. We read in Proverbs 15 verse 1. Proverbs 15 verse 1. A soft answer turns away wrath. So you're going to get peace. If you use your tongue in the right way, you're going to get peace. And even if you're rebuking someone, and if you rebuke according to those instructions that we've had from Proverbs, you are going to have peace. If you don't do it according to the instructions we have in Proverbs, you're going to have contention. Someone's going to get all upset and grumpy and everything. But if you do it with those principles in mind, you're going to go for peace. So that's a really neat reward. You're going to be free of trouble. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 23. Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Awesome. So free of trouble. You'll find mercy. Whoever confesses and I should read the verses out, the quotes out. Proverbs chapter 28, verse 13. He who confesses and forsakes his transgressions will obtain mercy. Awesome. So those are the first 9. The reward comes in these ways, by blessing individuals. It comes as we bless communities. It comes as we get acceptance from people. It comes in pleasant ways. It makes us satisfied. We get favor. We get peace. We're free of trouble. We'll find mercy from God. I think these are really awesome things. But here we go. 10. We got a few more to go. Health. Gracious words. Oh, sorry, I've done it again. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 24. Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. So you get a combination there of, for when you have gracious words, you not only get the health, but you get that satisfaction as well. A honeycomb. Right. Number 11, sweetness. As we've just seen in the health one, Proverbs chapter 27, verse 9. The sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. We've seen that already tonight. The sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. So when we give earnest counsel, we're promoting sweetness. Number 12, the reward of using our tongues well is refreshing. Proverbs 25, verse 13. Like the cold of snow in harvest time, as a faithful messenger to those who send him. He refreshes the soul of his masters. We saw that one last week as well. Another reward of using our tongues well is that it gives us great delight. I think that's neat. Imagine, just think about what it means to have great delight as we read this verse. Proverbs 24, verse 25. But those who rebuke the wicked will have great delight, and a good blessing will come upon them. There we go, 2 rewards, great delight and a good blessing. That was the other verse that I didn't talk about before, but it's in a very political sort of context. Treasure, number 14. We get treasure if we use our words. Words are like treasure. Proverbs chapter 25, verse 11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. And Proverbs 25, verse 12, the next verse, like a gold ring or an ornament of gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. So treasure is one of the rewards of speaking well. Now here's one of my favorites. It's not quite, these are getting, my idea with this order was getting them better and better and better. So we've got the best to come yet. But joy is one of the things that I really love here. Joy is one of those blessings, one of those rewards that comes from using our mouths well. Proverbs 15, verse 23. To make an apt answer is a joy to a man, and a word in season, how good it is. Proverbs 15, verse 30. Good news refreshes the bones. Proverbs 23, verse 16. My inmost being will exult when your lips speak what is right. Proverbs 24, verse 26. Whoever gives an honest answer kisses the lips. Really, I can't think of much better joy than that. If it's from someone you like, someone you don't like, it's not so good. But if it's from Sharon, from me, it's like, wow. Whoever gives an honest answer kisses the lips. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 11. Joy again. Be wise, my son, and make my heart glad, that I may answer him who reproaches me. And Proverbs 29, verse 6. A righteous man sings and rejoices. Isn't that awesome? That the reward is just so full of joy there. Right, number 16, confidence. So one of the rewards of using our voices well is confidence. Proverbs 31, verse 25 is speaking about the virtuous woman, and it says, she laughs at the time to come. She is using her voice, but she's laughing at the time to come. Her reward of that reward of laughter is absolute confidence. And Number 17, acceptance from God. This is another one that I think is really exciting. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 9. Fools mock at the guilt offering, but the upright enjoy acceptance. And there we can see again that confession side of things that we were looking at earlier. You know, fools mock at the guilt offering, but the upright enjoy acceptance, because we're not mocking at the at the guilt offering. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 8. The prayer of the upright is acceptable to the Lord. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 29. He hears the prayers of the righteous. Just think about that. If we're using our voices in the right way, we get accepted by God. And that's even better than being accepted by people. That's even better than, well, that builds on the satisfaction and the peace and the sweetness and the joy that we have, doesn't it? Acceptance from God. There's nothing much better than that. And yet I've got two more. Everlasting life. It was hard to know which order to put these last three in. Everlasting life. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 19. Listen to this. This is awesome. Truthful lips endure forever. I'll say it again. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 19. Truthful lips endure forever. Isn't that amazing? Proverbs 15, verse 4. A gentle tongue is a tree of life. Proverbs 18, verse 21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. If you love death, you'll get death. If you love life, you'll be talking about it, and that's what you will get. What an amazing reward. Everlasting life. And finally, the last one, and I've picked this one, I put this one in particular last, but I think it's a really exciting one. It's last because it's about last in the book of Proverbs. I think it may even be the last couple of verses. Yeah, about the last couple of verses. And you might want to look it up. Proverbs chapter 31, verses 28 and 29. And I want to just think about this. This is in the context of the virtuous woman. And it says this: her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. He says, many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. And I know not everyone agrees with me on this, but I think, you know, not only do we have a virtuous woman here, a woman who is an absolute amazing person, but we also have a picture of the bride of Christ. And if this is a picture of us as the bride of Christ, then what we have is her husband, Jesus. I want you to put yourself in the kingdom. At the time when we hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently. You surpass them all. And there is his bride, you and I, being praised by our Savior, our husband, our Lord Jesus Christ. So those are the rewards that I found in Proverbs for speaking out well, for using our tongues in a way that is acceptable to God. By doing this, we bless individuals, we bless communities, we get acceptance from people. We find that reward is pleasant, it's satisfying. We get favor We get peace. We're free from trouble. We get mercy, but it gives us health and sweetness and refreshing, great delight, treasure, joy. We have confidence, full confidence in the future, acceptance from God, everlasting life, and an amazing blessing from Jesus Christ. I hope that sort of really inspired you to be able to use your words in a way that pleases God. So in a summary, what we see here, in the last two sessions, we've looked at 3 instructions for living life out loud from the Proverbs. Speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves, just like Moses did for the Israelites. Speak words of healing, like Joseph did for his brothers. Reprove, like Nathan did for David. And we have also seen the rewards of living life out loud God's way. There are great rewards for living life out loud. But there are also other ways, and I don't want you to forget that. I want, we've talked about a few over the last 2 sessions, just those few, but we can also exhort, we can praise, we can pray, we can teach, we can give thanks, and numerous other ideas and throughout the scriptures of ways that we should be using our voice. And we can't forget to do those as well. So my encouragement to you this week is to go out and live life out loud. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Speak words of healing, reprove, rebuke, exhort with complete patience and teaching. Praise and give thanks for the blessings and rewards that God gives us. There we go.